Hello everyone and welcome to the semifinals of the FIDE World Cup. We are in the tiebreaks and it's Jan-Krzysztof Duda versus Magnus Carlsen. Their two classical games ended in a draw. Sadly, I didn't show any of the games because the first one was really a snooze fest and the second one was sort of an exciting snooze fest. So I decided that you guys would not appreciate any of those games, but this one packs a lot more action, so we're gonna show this one. It's the first of their rapid match and Duda has the white pieces. So without further ado, let's check it out and see what this game is about. Duda with the white pieces opens with e4. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. And since Sergei Karyakin is already in the finals, the winner of this match will of course face Karyakin for the do they even play each other? I don't know, because they had this like whoever reaches the final, that's it, they win. But maybe this year they will have like the finals. I could be mistaken, but I have to check. I actually have no idea. So here we have bishop to b5, knight to f6, and now d3. So the Berlin defense is on the board. We have d6 and now c3, grabbing more space in the center and preparing a4, b4. We have a6 by black, bishop to a4, and now bishop b5 chasing the bishop away is the way this is usually played, but Magnus goes for his signature move, and that is of course g6. It's very rare that Magnus will play an opening without playing the g6 move. We have castles, and now bishop to g7, rook to e1 now, and Magnus castles. We have h3, and now there are some moves that are known in this position, b5 again being the most popular one, but Magnus goes for knight back to b8. And now it's very usual in the Ruy Lopez with black that you will move this knight sometimes to a5, sometimes to b8, sometimes maybe even to e7 to be able to grab more space in the center with b5 and c5. So here we have knight b to d2, and of course it is as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. So knight b to d2 and now knight b to d7, reshuffling the knight. We have bishop back to c2, as you know b5 is coming, and Magnus of course executed. So b5, we have a4 now, challenging that b5 pawn, and bishop to b7. And now, of course, b4, very popular nowadays to just push on that queen side. We have c5, Magnus, of course, fighting for the center like this, now with very nice control of d4, also challenging the b4 pawn, and Duda captures on c5. We have pawn captures, and now knight captures. And now Duda has to decide what to do here. d4 seems very interesting, but he decides to capture here. We have a captures on b5, a captures, and now bishop to a3. So challenging Carlsen's knight here on c5, and there's the immediate threat of just captures, and winning the e5 pawn. So Magnus just defends it. You could play queen to b6. That's also possible, just connecting rooks, and you will be defending your knight with the queen. But Magnus decides for rook to e8, and now comes queen to b1 by Duda. Also very interesting is c4, because it's a direct threat to that b5 pawn, and the point is, if you capture on c4, which seems good for black because you're capturing, you know, towards the center, then we go into this forcing bishop captures on c5, let's say rook captures on a1, queen captures, and now after we play d captures on c5, knight captures, now with the triple attack on the e5 pawn. So maybe also something that was possible. But okay, after rook to e8, we have queen to b1 by Duda, now attacking the b5 pawn, and now comes bishop to c6. Magnus defends it and prepares a very nice idea. The situation on the clock, as these are rapid games, is Duda some 13 minutes on the clock, Magnus around 10 minutes on the clock. So here we have d4, finally. E captures on d4, c captures, and now comes the move that Magnus prepared with bishop to c6, and that is of course b4. Always a good move. Now there's the question of what do you do? Do you capture the knight? Do you capture the pawn with the bishop? Do you capture the pawn with the queen? A lot of very good options, but just to explore some of them, if you go after the knight, d captures on c5, we're going to capture the bishop, and now black is left with a very strong passed pawn here. You're going to capture on d6, but now there's even knight d7 opening up this beautiful diagonal for the dark square bishop. Rook a2, we're going to play knight to e5, and you will have to deal with this pawn for the rest of the game. Okay, you do have this pawn on d6, but it's very likely that black will be able to capture it. it. So it is possible Duda doesn't like this idea. Another thing, after after b4, you could just grab the pawn, but that kind of runs into knight c captures on e4. And now we're going to play knight captures on e4, knight captures on e4, bishop captures, rook captures, and now rook captures on a8. And the problem is, after queen captures on a8, the rook is defended here, so this capture fest definitely favors black, so not something Duda is interested in. So after this b4, it seems Duda was prepared for it, because he played bishop to b2 right away, so avoiding all of these lines. And now Magnus has to deal with this knight being under attack, but he just plays b3. Now again saying, okay, you can capture on c5, I'm gonna capture on b3. And that's exactly what it does. While you could play bishop d3, it really makes sense to get rid of this pawn. So d captures on c5, we have bishop, b captures on c2, queen captures, and now d captures on c5. And now the problem is, going after the c5 pawn like this runs into bishop captures on e4. And it's possible, but it's maybe giving black a bit much. Knight captures, and now let's say we trade off the rooks, rook captures, queen captures. It's I mean, it's completely equal position, not much to look at, and definitely not something to look forward to with white, because you know, if you draw this, you're playing against Magnus, and he will have the white pieces next round. So instead, after d captures on c5, knight to e5, now threatening to capture the bishop on c6, and now bishop to a4. Magnus attacks the queen here, and both players are now around 7 minutes on the clock. And Magnus here is trying to get some activity here. For example, if Duda plays something like queen to c4 here, then I guess his idea was a rook captures on e5. And it's a very tricky move, because if bishop captures, we're going to capture on d2, and now you can't capture the bishop because the rook hangs here, so you're going to move the rook, now still threatening the bishop, and now we're going to play queen back to d7, defend the bishop like this. Now we're going to play rook to b6, attack the knight here, so a very tactical line, and now knight to e8, offering a trade-off bishop. So after bishop captures, knight captures, for example, queen captures on c5, we would have this position where Duda would be up a pawn, and he would have a rook for a knight and the bishop. But Magnus, of course, would be very happy to play this, as he didn't like playing two rooks against, being down the exchange that Duda was in the previous classical game. But okay, here after bishop to a4, we have the immediate rook captures on a4, we have rook captures on a4, and now queen captures on a4. Magnus grabs the knight on d2, and now queen back to a1. Now again, putting pressure along this diagonal. So Magnus goes knight h5. He says, all right, if this knight moves, we're just going to trade here. And the thing is, you could play something like knight to c4, attack the queen and attack the bishop here, but Magnus just trades here. Bishop captures, knight captures, and then you have to deal with this pass pawn. Not a lot of fun. So instead, we have bishop to c3 by Duda, preparing a very, very tricky line, because the only thing defending the f7 pawn is the king. That's what Duda is hoping for. We have queen to c2 by Magnus, and now queen to a7, attacking the f7 pawn here. So if Magnus captures on c3, we're just going to capture on f7 and then pick up the rook here with check. So Magnus instantly played queen to b3 now, defending this, and now what do? The knight here is hanging. You have to do something about this, and there is only one move that helps Duda control the position, and that is queen captures on c5. So he wins this pawn, and now nicely defends the knight. But now Magnus has knight to f4, and now there are so many forks here that you have to calculated. The simplest idea would be just removing the defender of the d3 square, because knight d3 then attacks the queen and the rook. So this is the threat. Bishop captures, knight d3, and you have to defend against this. The only move that properly defends is rook to e3, and this is what Duda plays. And he's very much down on the clock. He's 2 minutes on the clock. Magnus some 4 minutes on the clock, and now Magnus played queen to d1 check, hoping for king to h2, because if king to h2, queen f1 just wins for him. You're threatening checkmate, and now if the rook moves, you're just going to play knight e2. Now the king does not have an escape square, the knight covers that, and queen to g1 is the threat of checkmate. So very, very bad position. Okay, you can play f4, the queen will guard g1, but then we're just gonna, capture on f4. We could also pick up the exchange. Like anything is possible here, but black would be completely winning. So instead, after this queen to d1 check, Duda quickly went back, rook to e1, and now Magnus went queen to b3. We have rook to e3, and here both players were down to 30 seconds because Magnus spent most of his time calculating what can happen if we play bishop captures on e5, since this is the only well, possible continuation that doesn't involve black, you know, having a worse position. But in the end, we had queen to d1 check, rook to e1, queen to b3, and it was in this position that, well, players agreed to a draw, as there is nothing more to be done here. And truth be told, there is nothing more to be done here, because if Magnus continued with this idea, for example, rook to e3 and then bishop captures on e5, which kind of is the strongest continuation, we run into bishop captures queen d1 check, attacking the king here, king to h2, and now knight to e2, threatening checkmate. But now white has rook captures on e2, and Magnus not interested in playing this, because if queen captures, you have queen to d4. And now, yes, black is up the exchange, but white has so much pressure along the dark squares, it's going to be very, very hard for black to even play this. For example, queen h5, we want to bring our queen here to help out defending the dark squares, bishop f6. If queen h6, we're going to play e5. And now this bishop here is a monster. You can never do anything here with black. If this rook ever moves the back rank, it's just checkmate, so black will not be able to achieve anything here. So of course Magnus knows this, and after queen to b3, he said, all right, let's get a draw here. We're going to try with white in the next one, and Duda will try his best with the black pieces, because this is the second rapid game, and whoever wins that one is the winner of the entire match. If not, we go into shorter rapid games, then the blitz, then the Armageddon. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Another draw between these two fine gentlemen. We're going to see what happens in the next one, so stay tuned for that. I would like to thank Jeffrey Johnson, Pradip Prakar, Boris Radenchek, Parmenion Kotsegeorgos, and David Kimura for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the semi-final match, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.